Uh, There we are. Good morning, everybody, and good morning to our viewing audience. Uh, This is the meeting of the Policy Review Committee of Columbus City Schools for November 12th. Dr. Roush, roll call, please.
Chair Brown,
Here.
Board Member Cole, Board Member Pierce,
Present.
Ms. Beasley,
Present.
Ms. Klein,
Present.
Ms. Ellingson, Mr. Holt, Ms. White.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Wonderful. Well, good morning to all of you. We've got a fair number of policy to get to, but we do have a quorum, and we've got some minutes to approve.
I apologize. The minutes were, I did not get a chance to finish the minutes before this meeting. So unfortunately, we'll have to do those
Well,
at the next meeting. So
great, no problem. We'll hold off. And let's get right into the policies in, I guess, section 3 of our agenda.
if I may ask if we could start with policy 5000, the transgender and gender variant students policy. We have a number of guests today to help speak to that policy. If that is okay with the chair,
Yes, totally.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now so that we can see this particular policy. When we last met, we had a very fulsome discussion on this policy, and as you can see, we've already made a number of edits and changes. We had a number of folks reach out to other groups and talk with students, which is, I think, where you see gender variant came out of those discussions rather than gender non-conforming. We added a reference, I think, per the committee's desire last time, regarding a cross-reference to our harassment and bullying policies. We modified assigned gender to sex assigned at birth. This was a comment made from our friends at Kaleidoscope, as well as the term affirmed rather than preferred. We added under the unofficial records yearbooks and student identification cards. Ms. Beal can speak to that better, but in her discussions with students, this was something very important to them. We made a number of other conforming changes and then added the statement on dress code. You see facility accessibility was deleted. Well, we already had a section on facilities up above right here. And so we simply moved that statement under that rather than having two subheadings on facilities. So those were the changes we've made thus far. And my colleagues are on, Ms. Beal, Dr. Blue, and Ms. Lillis. So if I missed anything, please let me know.
Wonderful. Who'd like to speak first?
Are there any questions or any other comments on the policy draft as presented before you now?
So I guess I was waiting for one of our guest speakers to jump in, but to get the conversation going, I would say that I appreciate the new language, the word choice. You know, all of us that are familiar with the 4 agreements, we know that we need to be impeccable with our words. I appreciate the work that our committee members and our team has done to ensure that we have words that really capture what our students are not just going through, but what they're walking into, right? They're walking into who they are and into their purpose. And so we want to make sure that the language and the word choice that we use affirms that. And so thank you for that work. Thank you for getting the language and the wording right, because I believe that's critically important.
Good. Jimmy, are you?
I would be glad to
share with you guys, one of the pieces that came out of the last meeting was a desire to make sure that what we used was how students would identify themselves rather than, sometimes adults identifying students or even in this case, cisgender people who are not trans or gender variant, trying to kind of label or use terminology that labels students in a way that they wouldn't necessarily. So we, Dr. Blue connected with Kaleidoscope, and I asked several of our student groups, and then we also pulled national, the model language from several national organizations, and the really nice thing was how well all of that aligned. So that really made us feel like we were on the right path with the language. And then students had said, please make sure it speaks to yearbooks and student ID cards, because those are the two things as far as records go that they deal with regularly in school. And they wanted to make sure there was not any question or that they wouldn't have any barriers in school regarding those two things, because those are the two that are most common for them. I mean, all of these other records, they have and know about, but the two things that they regularly deal with and are a priority for them are those. So we just want to make sure we were listening to the students when it came to this piece.
That's great. Everything I see here, I like, and I like the approach that was taken to get us to this point. So thank you.
And Judge Brown, if I can just throw in too, to Dr. Pierce's point, we just did the work. We reached out to community members, talked to students, but really, our goal is to see how we can get the support, within our CCS community. So just having the backing of the board, and I just applaud you all for taking on a policy like this in the first place. And we're looking forward to really helping our staff and teachers and buildings to really embrace this in terms of the support that our students need.
Thank you for that. I was thinking similarly that, we've got the language and the policy right and all of that, but it's the culture that needs to change. And this, we hope, will give some further incentive to everyone to help change the culture.
I would also add that we have continued to work on the administrative guidelines. We started that work probably 4 to 6 weeks ago, and continue to kind of revise and edit and add to that language as we have these discussions. Certainly we will take these policy changes back to our administrative guideline committee and review to make sure all of the language matches. Once the policy has been formally adopted by the board, the administrative guidelines will go to the accountability committee, and that is the entity that actually approves the administrative guidelines. So we're kind of working on 2 paths right now, so that when the board does in fact hopefully approve the policy, we will be ready to go with the guidelines. Anticipating that likely would occur in either January or February.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So I just want to ensure that the language in the facilities section encompasses, because we specifically talk about restrooms and locker rooms, I just want to make sure that we are encompassing our preparatory school for girls and preparatory school for boys. And what happens if there is a gender variant student or transgender student who wishes to attend one of those single sex education programs?
What is our current practice?
Ms. Lillis, do you have have we had that situation arise, or do we have an opinion on that?
That is not something, quite honestly, that we had discussed. I appreciate the point. It's well made. At this point, it's my understanding that to apply to one of those single gender schools, the parent simply applies as they would with other lottery programs, so to speak, schools that are open for enrollment of any student in the district. I think it's probably a good idea to include a sentence. Certainly it's a valid point, because students really of any gender should be able to apply and be accepted to those schools. Certainly we've met requirements in terms of having schools or programs open for each of the genders. But I would agree that it could be a concern if certain students are denied admission to those programs based on their gender variant, how they present, any of those kinds of issues. So I do think that's probably something we should include.
So, Ms. Klein, are you talking about, when you said facilities, were you talking about enrollment in the program, or are you talking about there's a student who is a student at the school who begins a transition, who now has to have a different facility to use in terms of bathroom, locker room? Is that what you're saying? Or
I
just all of
I
it?
suppose both.
Right, because I mean, it is a great idea. We hadn't discussed that, so I'm glad that you brought it up, because that is something we would need to revisit, because we could have a current student in either program who begins a transition that we would need to address.
If I could make a suggestion here, if we try to like mirror the language of like Title IX, it speaks of no discrimination in any educational program or activity. And it seems like instead of, we've got a number of, programs and activities, we could have an overarching part that just says there will be no discrimination in, educational programs or activities. And that should cover also, which school somebody goes to, not just the facilities and the locker rooms and the yearbooks in that school.
So
True,
within,
but we are going to have a process for how we support that student in that situation. Aside from the fact that we know we won't discriminate, but we still have to accommodate. I think that's really the conversation I was thinking about.
Yeah. There are a lot of higher education programs, colleges and universities that are single sex, and particularly the ones that are traditionally female colleges have had a number of trans students. And I understand that best practices have been developed to welcome and support those students. So that might be a body of experience that we might want to draw on in doing those regulations.
I agree. And one of the things that I wrote down for myself in terms of a task is to look and see exactly what the language is on the application for those programs or those schools. I'm not aware. I have not looked or reviewed those before, but I think we all raise a good point. And so I will certainly go back and look at how those applications are worded. To make sure that it matches with this policy, matches with Title IX. Maybe there are some edits that we can do through that application process.
I apologize for not figuring this out at our last meeting. Should have brought this up at our last meeting.
Well, it's shaping up very nicely. guess my question at this point, and I don't know that I have a strong feeling either way. One, we can go forward with this and have the board consider and presumably adopt, and then come back with an amendment that adds a sentence or two dealing with that particular issue, or we can just hold it and check out these other sources of information and put pen to paper and do that before we recommend it to the board. Anybody have thoughts?
Chair Brown, I would like to just point out that here in the second paragraph, we do have, as we relate to having an educational work environment free from all forms of unlawful discrimination or harassment. The commitment applies to all school district operations, programs, and activities. So I don't know, Ms. White, if that answers.
Perfect. No, we're covered. I'm sorry. We've looked at this so often that it's kind of.
I do want to point out, because this did remind me that our Mr. Sinkowski from our Office of Internal Audit asked about the inclusion of the word unlawful there. I don't know, Ms. Lillis, if you have a thought as to whether that term unlawful should be deleted or maintained. Unlawful discrimination or harassment.
Probably delete. Because if it's discrimination or harassment, it likely is going to be unlawful. It's akin to, dare I say, sometimes you'll see inappropriate sexual contact with a student. Well, it doesn't have to be inappropriate. Any sexual contact is not appropriate. So I think it's similar in that we all know that discrimination or harassment based on certainly one of these factors is unlawful. So yeah, I think it's fine to take that out.
Okay. If there's no objection, upon the advice of counsel, we'll go ahead and delete the term unlawful there. And thank you, Mr. Sinkowski, for pointing that out. I guess to Ms. Beal and Ms. Lillis and to Dr. Blue, I would think that the specifics around our single gender programs could be addressed, and probably should be addressed via our administrative guidelines, where we can get into much more granular detail. I like to think that the language saying that we're not going to discriminate on any of our programs or activities covers us from a policy standpoint, and then we simply have to put the meat on the bones, so to speak, in order to make sure that the processes and all the various steps that we have to go through comply then with the policy. So
I would
Yes.
agree.
Thank you for that, Dr. Roush, because that's exactly what I was wondering. If we couldn't just put that overarching sentence and then address all those, additional pieces in the admin guidelines. Also, for the sake of, kind of a quicker route, we've gotten this year several emails from counselors who are working with students who want name changes, and we had put that on hold. So we've told them that they need to, that this is in the works, but that it's probably going to be January or February, and we really can't do anything until this is complete. So I would rather not have to, push that out further if that's possible at all.
And I would agree with Jimmy. We are aware that we have students and families who are, dare I say, anxiously awaiting, also staff, so that we can move forward. And I would prefer to see that rather than holding on everything. Certainly we can go back and make any kind of revisions or add language to the administrative guidelines as necessary.
That all makes sense to me. Do we want to include one single overarching sentence now? Or is that sentence in the second paragraph take care of it?
From my perspective, the sentence in the second paragraph does take care of it. Dr. Roush, thank you for pointing that out. And everybody, thank you for just bringing it to our attention that this is a policy that we need to move on as community members, staff, and students are highly anticipating the rollout of it.
Could I suggest, though, that we take out the specific restroom and locker rooms reference in facilities? Because if you read that first sentence, if you take that out, then I think it would apply to our single gender programs. And then the administrative guidelines could take over from there.
I would be supportive of that removal of language from the document. Thank you.
Others have thoughts about deleting that sentence?
Not the sentence, just a little
Just
paragraph,
the
or just a
phrase.
little parentheses.
Right, okay. All right, well, it sounds like we're about there. Do we have a motion to approve and recommend this policy?
I motion that we approve policy 5000 and recommend it to our Board of Education.
As amended.
As amended. I apologize.
Who is the second? I'm sorry.
I'll second.
Ms. Beasley?
Roll call, please.
Chair Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Pierce?
Yes.
Ms. Beasley?
Yes.
Ms. Klein?
Yes.
Ms. White?
Yes.
That motion carries.
Very good. Thank you, everybody who worked on this, for your really good work. Appreciate it.
And
Which one? Go ahead, Eric.
because we have Ms. Lillis here again, I wanted to know if we could go ahead and take up policy. Why am I drawing a blank on the number? 5230, the late arrival and early dismissal. If we could take that up very quickly, that would be very helpful as well. Just because I know she had a comment on this, and I wanted to make sure that before she left us, and we don't want to keep her. She's welcome to stay the whole time, as is everybody else. but for those who are only on for policy 5000, feel free to move on if you wish.
Thank you very much, you guys.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jimmy.
But this was a policy that the committee had forwarded and said they wanted to make sure that we were comfortable, that we crossed all of our T's and dotted all of our I's. Sorry, I need another cup of coffee this morning, I guess. Safety and security was fine with language as is, but Ms. Lillis did raise a question regarding the term surrogate parent in there, and I will go ahead and share my screen and bring up that policy again. We suggested removing the term surrogate parent because surrogate parents, when it comes to signing students in and out, that's not a role that they play. But I'll let Ms. Lillis go into a little bit greater detail on that. Ms. Lillis?
Sure. So in our education world, surrogate parent is somewhat of a term of art, because in instances where a child is in the custody of a children's services agency, before any kind of special education decisions can be made, the district is required to appoint a surrogate parent. And that person then has the authority to make any and all decisions regarding special education for that child. So when we're talking surrogate parent in, quite honestly, the education world as we generally know it, that is the person that we are referring to. So that person does not have the authority to make decisions regarding general education. And I see signing a student in and out of school as being more of a general education kind of issue. That is not the role that a surrogate parent would play in the district. So I did have concern about that particular term. It may be that, we're thinking of someone else who might in fact have some type of authority, student who could do that. And so maybe there is another term or word that could be used rather than surrogate parent, just so there's no confusion for our staff. So I guess maybe my question is in I'll say the history of this discussion and consideration, were you thinking of someone else who might have authority, let's say, to sign a student in and out of school? And is there maybe a different term that we could use rather than surrogate?
So I think I recall some of our discussion really dealing with caregivers in terms of grandparents who might be raising grandchildren, doing drop-offs and pickups, aunts and uncles that may stand in. So I know that we wanted to be very mindful of our blended family situations. And so I remember that being a very key part of the discussion that we were having.
So Ms. Lillis, the term surrogate parent is specific to, and does not include those grand aunts and uncles who might be picking a child.
Right. It sounds like you're thinking of surrogate in a more general or I say
yes.
generic kind of form or term versus the law specifically identifies and defines a surrogate parent. And that's maybe where the confusion was. I am reading, let's see here. Let me make this a bit larger. Okay. Because this does not include, as I read through here, so the district certainly allows parents at the start of the school year to complete a form, which would note generally 3 individuals who would be permitted to pick up a student, sign that student out of school. And that is, well, I don't see that specifically.
I don't either.
Dr. Roush, was there discussion regarding?
That is not referenced in this particular policy now.
Okay.
It is the procedure of the district, but it is not noted particularly here in this policy. We certainly could include that in this policy.
Right.
But it is not. It is, but that card, that emergency contact card, that I think it's a yellow card. Ms. Lillis is correct. You can identify up to 3 individuals that you can come and pick up the students. And so here, as we define parent for purposes of the policy, we're saying that those are those natural adoptive parents and those folks who have certain legal rights as given by courts or through other statutory mechanisms.
Is there any way we can reference some form of language that points to the parents being able to designate individuals to pick the child up? Because right now that language in the first sentence is very legal, right? It's very legal. And I think our families would understand if you designated, 3 people on your yellow contact form, that those individuals then have access to or the right with your permission to pick your child up from school. And I'm trying to recall, forgive me, but
the title of that form. So there's a medical authorization for emergency medical treatment during the school day. That is a different form than what we as a district and every other district passes out that says, these are the people who are authorized to pick up my child during the school day. And I'm trying to think of the name on the form. I can see the form because we just, within the past couple of years, we edited that form and revised it. But we've always relied on that, especially when it comes to early dismissal. You're right. You may have working parents or a lot of other situations where the parent or someone in that first sentence isn't able to get to the school to pick the student up, especially if the student has early dismissal every day, let's say. But the parent, we've always allowed the parents to designate 3 people who can actually come in, sign out the student and take the student. And that would seem to be reasonable in this kind of situation as well.
So we do have the statement here that no student shall be released to anyone who has not authorized such custody by the parents. So that form certainly would authorize such release. Does the committee feel that we need clarification under this particular sentence referencing that form?
I'm kind of wondering if maybe we want to treat the drop-off separately than the pickup, because they kind of have very different risks involved. The way that we started looking at this policy, I think last spring, was worrying about the situation of basically a parent who loses custody picking up the child and doing something bad. And we've now explored a bunch of other concerns, but it's kind of less of a concern of a family member, whoever, dropping off the child versus the pickup. Whereas I agree that, let's conform our policy with our practice, especially as far as designating the folks who are authorized to pick up. That makes perfect sense.
I've also had the question come up many times to me, kind of like what was just described in terms of, releasing a child to an unauthorized person. I can tell you that, so 2 parts of that. Number one, if someone shouldn't be picking up a child, if there's a change in custody, if there's a protection order, then the school should absolutely be notified that same day, provided documentation so it can be uploaded into Infinite Campus so everyone can see it. My other direction to schools is, ideally, that shouldn't be a concern, because the person has to come into the school, sign the student out, show identification, and that school secretary or whomever may be in the office should be verifying that, in fact, this is a person that the child can be released to. So if the process is working correctly, it should certainly reduce, I'll say, I can't say eliminate, but certainly reduce that concern. But I do agree that late arrival is a different thing. We have, lots of individuals who drop students off, again, just because of family situations, which, we've always been mindful of.
So perhaps we simply need to clarify that the parental authorization is for dismissal in that regard. Because that's really, at that point, what we're referring to is who the student may be released to.
The only, dare I say, the only, I guess, the word that makes me pause in the parental authorization is custody. So, of course, most of our staff, when they think of custody, it's who's the parent or legal guardian. And in this case, I think the language is referring to the person or persons that the parents are authorizing to pick up the child. I just want to make sure that there's no confusion in the word custody, because our staff may be kind of used to a different interpretation of that term.
So should we rewrite that sentence that says no student shall be released to anyone not authorized such custody, and keep it with, I like the first sentence that says, here's the person who makes the decision, basically. And then should we have one that says in a more clean way, and that person can either pick up themselves or authorize a person using our form?
What do you mean by authorizing the person who's using the form?
Authorizing the pickup of the child. So we have the person who can make that decision overall, and that's going to, we've defined who that person is. But as you pointed out, our form can say, here are 3 trusted friends and neighbors who also have authority to pick up if I say so.
I almost wonder if just simply Eric had highlighted at one point, removing that such custody language, because really it is, no student shall be released to anyone who is not authorized by the parents.
Parent.
Mhm. That really is the situation. But then we also have the authorized such custody in the following.
Yeah. No, you're right. If you remove that and keep it really clean and simple, then we've said who can do it, how they do it, and then how it's verified by the school. And we have it just those 3 points in a row.
I would also add that in instances of shared parenting, we allow both parents to complete separate cards. So, depending on who the child is with that day, they may have a completely different person to pick up. So we've always recognized that and allowed that to occur.
So with the deletion of the term such custody, have we gotten it where it needs to be now?
Well, you still have the word authorized in there. Present a photo and other identification may be required of including parents. Wouldn't it just be period right there?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't mean to throw another wrench in, but something just occurred to me is that there are sometimes situations, just an extreme emergency situation where, a parent may call in and maybe it's not one of the 3 people, but there's been serious illness, accident, injury, whatever the case may be. And the parent says, I need, this person who may not be one of the 3 to come pick my child up. And so we have certainly been flexible, I would say. I mean, it's not, we understand things happen. And so we try to work with our families the best we can. And I can say that certainly those kinds of situations, they're rare, but they've come up and we've tried to be accommodating. Part of it is certainly verifying the parent information and any of that to make sure that we are speaking with the appropriate individuals.
Does it help that the authorization does not necessarily need to be it doesn't require here in the policy that it be in writing? So it would seem that if I as a parent called and said, my brother who's not on a list because he lives in Dayton is coming to pick up my daughter,
Right.
and the school knows me, that's an authorized pickup. I say who he is, what his name is. He shows up. He says here he's got his ID to prove who he is, whether that's his driver's license or his utility bill. Is that take care of that in your mind?
It does. It does. I think that's fine because you're right. It doesn't have to be written authorization. I was just thinking in terms of, we talked about the, yellow card and listing the 3 people. And so I just wanted to kind of share and make sure everybody was aware that there are exceptional circumstances that happen. And we do accommodate, but I think you're right. I think because it doesn't say written authorization, it would be okay.
We really, one of our goals, because we've spent so long on this ID part and now this authorization part, we really wanted to leave room for good judgment for folks, but also make sure that the frontline staff don't feel like exposed or unprotected if they exercise that judgment with families that they know. But you're right about the authorization. I mean, I've certainly had like, work trips that went longer than I expected where I had to call to say like, hey, a friend is going to have to pick up that I wasn't expecting. I don't want children's services called in that circumstances, and I'm sure most other families don't either.
Right.
And I apologize to all of you. I got bumped off and had to reboot. So I missed a good part, especially Wanda's introduction of discussion on this policy. But once I got back on, I listened, and you guys didn't need me. Have we reached consensus? Are we ready to go forward?
I believe we are.
Do we have a motion to approve this policy and recommend it to the board?
I motion to approve policy 5230 as amended and recommend to the board.
Second.
All right. Roll call, please.
Chair Brown,
Yes.
Dr. Pierce,
Yes.
Ms. Beasley,
Yes.
Ms. Klein,
Yes.
Ms. White.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Great. Which one would you like to move to next?
Let's go ahead and let's do 1520, employment of administrators. I'm going to share my screen again as I'm moving around.
Is there any other need for me, Dr. Roush?
You are welcome to stay or to leave. Your choice.
Maybe everybody be happy if I leave so I don't raise any more issues, but that's okay. Thank
Well,
you.
I do have a question before you leave,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis. What about the religion and curriculum, just in case? Would that be,
That is not one that I'm familiar
okay.
with. Is that, I'm going to have to ask, is that part of the agenda? I mean, as a topic for today.
It is. But we certainly can reach out if we need to.
Yeah.
Would you like to shift to another policy then, Chair Brown?
If it'd be helpful to have Wanda for the religion and the curriculum policy,
That is, I can do that. That is not a problem.
fine.
We'll go to
I will-
2270 here.
I will share that my knowledge and experience in terms of religion, there is, I believe that Dr. Roush may help me out here. There is a policy that was not adopted specifically from Neola that has to do with religious music.
That is correct. It was a policy. It was a policy that was part of an agreement made, I think, as part of a consent agreement a number of years ago. That policy is still in effect.
Okay.
It is there. These are changes to two other policies, 2270 and 8800, that essentially stem from the recent enactment of House Bill 164.
Yes.
House Bill 164, which has been kind of brewing around the General Assembly for a number of years now. It became the basis of COVID 2.0 relief, which is why I think you now see that it has been enacted. And in short, the changes that you see here reflect what was written in the statute, which is that students, can't be prohibited from engaging in religious expression, including the completion of homework, artwork, or other written or oral assignments. That is from the statute, and that those assignments should be graded in the same manner as they would. The sponsors of the legislation felt that students were being penalized for expressing particular religious beliefs through artwork or through creative writing, through other outlets. They also felt that a number of religious student groups were being unfairly discriminated against in regards to when they could meet or how often they could meet, which is why you also see the strike, the language that's been struck, stating that they're limited to lunch periods or other non-instructional time when students are free to associate. Essentially, the argument being that the groups with a religious message were not allowed to either participate in announcements or were relegated to these other times to meet, where other student groups were allowed to meet during other periods of time. And they said that the secular and the religious should be treated the same. There was quite a bit of testimony from the ACLU stating that there's a lot of case law that already governs this. There really isn't a reason to put this into statute. But at the end of the day, the General Assembly took action in this particular regard, and so now it is state law. And so these policies reflect the changes that have now come about due to House Bill 164. Whether or not we put them in the policy, the statutes still govern. So then we could have language that actually is contra to Ohio law. The added language just simply explains what's going forward. The struck language actually would be contra to the law because they're no longer limited to those periods. Essentially, we have to treat secular and religious student groups, secular and religious thought in regards to artwork, etc. In other words, this is the individual student. This isn't a curricular. This isn't the teacher necessarily making the decision. This is a student. You tell me to paint something and I paint something with a religious theme. You can't penalize me for the fact that I painted something with a religious theme. Is in short where this is going. The language is the same in both 8800 and 2270. I mean, it's very similar. We can look at 8800 after this as well to verify. The other item that I made, and this was caught by again our friends with internal audit, we do not have we opted not to adopt the administrative guidelines 8800 A through C, which really I took a look today. One has to do with the Pledge of Allegiance and flag etiquette. And I'm like, we said we really don't need to go down that path from the administrative guidelines. So we'll just strike that language out of there. I think when Neola creates these templates, they often throw policies and AGs in, just assuming everybody's going to take everything carte blanche. We don't take everything Neola has carte blanche because we have a lot of different needs than perhaps a district of 1,500 students. So that's the other change that you see that's different than what was in your presented. Would be our recommendation as staff, or my recommendation is to strike that references to the AGs. But then the rest of this is due to the statutory change in House Bill 164. It's a very long-winded explanation, I know.
I appreciate the explanation, Dr. Rausch. And as I was reading this policy, I think for me, the thing that really stood out is, as a student, as you said, if I select to depict or to bring my religious beliefs in, that I not be penalized for that. But I also wonder from my educator perspective, as an educator, say I give an assignment, for example, and I like to give my students is to pick a song that kind of leans into or aligns with the political rhetoric that you may align with or you may disagree with. So in that song selection, as an educator, are there guidelines? Would there be guidelines? Should this policy touch on what I do as an educator when creating that assignment? Should I open it up and say, you can include religious hymns? Because I keep, again, using my example, I keep it very popular. So I often say pop song, R&B, hip hop, like I give those examples of genres. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's my biggest thing. Are there legal ramifications, or should we have things in mind from a legal perspective regarding how the teacher creates the assignment?
I mean, I think the 6th paragraph covers you, Dr. Pierce, where you are not prohibited from providing reasonable periods of time for activities of a moral, philosophical, or patriotic theme. you can't require your students to do an assignment where they have to pick a hymn in order to back up a political belief, but you would just have to give them an alternative assignment or an alternative way to express that. I think. I mean, that's the way I read the policy. Quite frankly, from my perspective as a lawyer, I think that having this policy at all just is unnecessary, and we should just strike it in total.
Explain why you feel it's unnecessary.
I mean, I think that Supreme Court decisions, U.S. Supreme Court decisions, cover the religious participation during school hours and in school. I don't know why we would have to have a policy that basically doesn't say anything other than you have to follow what the law of the land is.
I kind of disagree on that. I mean, respectfully, I think that this policy actually, like in a very readable, legible way, really completely aligns with what the Supreme Court cases are, so that rather than have to read through them and wonder what they mean or how they work, this one really says it in plain language. Don't do devotional activities that are required in school. Have a way that students can request to opt out of policies that, you know, they think violate their genuine held beliefs. And also, it makes clear there's a world of difference between, you know, the students and faculty in terms of this. I'll just say, as a parent of in a family with mixed religious traditions and minority religious traditions, I really like this policy a lot as written, because, you know, I don't want my child participating in religious activities or devotional activities that are not consistent with our family's traditions, and I'm sure that other families feel the same way. And this one just seems like we've got a policy that's written for our diverse community while also making things very clear. So, and also this looks very different in practice than, you know, the public schools I grew up in, that in retrospect, I think crossed the line in ways that I don't think were acceptable then and are not acceptable now, not Columbus City schools. So I appreciate that it's all written out, because I think that I think this is actually an area where it does need to be said, even though, you know, the Supreme Court has also said it.
And I agree with that. I understand the point, Joel, and I think that we have a fair number of policies that simply track the law, restate the law. But this is, you know, our policy book is the repository of, you know, all kinds of matters that I guess it's used as the resource that people will first go to. And if a question arises, I think it's a lot to expect that everybody's going to know the law from the Supreme Court on these topics. In this way, they're going to go first to the policy, and it's going to be spelled out here in pretty clear language, and be able to answer most questions, properly answer. So I think it's better to have it than not, but I certainly understand your point. Do we have anything else, any other questions or comments about this policy?
I do have one suggestion for the amended language. This part that says students shall not be prohibited from engaging in religious expression. And it says such assignments will be graded in the same manner as other assignments. I would recommend that we not only say that they're graded in the same manner, but that the assignment will be held to the same standards as whatever assignment it is. So if it's a science lesson, it's going to be held to scientific standards. If it's a literature one, it'll be held to literature standards. Because otherwise, I think the issue is going to come up that kids are like, oh, well, you're judging my religion or you're judging whatever. If a kid is putting that forward to satisfy the criteria for a science lesson, well, it's got to be held to those standards. So I would say instead of just saying like we're going to grade it in the same manner, it's going to be held to the same standards as well.
Mhm.
I think that's a great addition. I appreciate that. That's a great addition.
Yeah, I think so too. I seem to recall that there was conversation about exactly that point in the legislature. And I don't know whether I don't have the statute in front of me. So I don't know how it came out, whether it touches on that.
At the end of the sponsors certainly felt that it did. So, for instance, you couldn't say, well, 2 + 2 = 5 under my religious beliefs, right? And they were saying that's not a way out of that. Or even if we're talking about evolution, if you're going to discuss it, you have to still use the scientific method. You can't just simply state that this is my belief and move on. You have to actually still lay out everything in the same manner that one would for any other scientific explanation or scientific paper. It has to still kind of meet those same standards and criteria. So that was the point of the sponsors. I believe there were a number of individuals who respectfully disagreed with that particular take and feel that it may very well open Pandora's box. But I think that this actually does help kind of clarify that point, because I don't believe that it's quite as explicitly stated. I think it was one of those items that was more referenced in the testimony and in the discussion on the legislation than it was necessarily included in the final bill.
Good. Why don't we go ahead and add that?
I've made the changes, so whatever the will of the committee is.
I move that we approve policy 2270 as amended and recommend to the board.
And just to clarify, the amendment is that phrase that students will be held to the same standard.
And if the committee would be so kind as to take my amendment of deleting the references to the AG, which we have opted not to adopt. The rest are again kind of conforming with the committee's charge a while ago that I missed, and my apologies, of changing the his her to a more neutral terminology. Those are the changes. You can see them in blue on your screen.
I am curious, is the newest statute referenced at the end? Did you add that on?
It is not, but I will, I'm going back into the references here section. No, I will go back in and reference that code section.
Great. With those changes, we have a motion, and we have a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Chair Brown,
Yes.
Dr. Pierce,
Yes.
Ms. Beasley,
Yes.
Ms. Klein,
Yes.
Ms. White.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Great.
I can go to 8800 now,
Right.
which is the other. So again, you see the language striking the limitation of lunch periods and other instructional time periods. And then adding that they may choose to engage in religious expression before, during, or after school hours in the same manner and to the same extent a student is permitted to engage in secular activities or expression, as I noted earlier. And again, adding that no students are required to participate in any such religious activity.
Are there questions on this policy? Well,
I
in
just
that
wanted to
case,
comment- Oh, I really appreciate the way and the care that this is written in as well, especially the, no compliance shall be required. I think these are, it's particularly important to have that guidance in this kind of policy. So I like this policy as written, and I think that this one is also being complied with, very well in the schools, at least that I've seen with my family.
any other comments, questions?
I don't have a comment on the additional language, but is it absolutely true that a flag has to be taken down every day after school, even if it might be lit? I mean, if a flag has a light shining on it, it can stay.
You are correct that if a flag is lighted, it may remain.
It should not touch the ground.
And it should not touch the ground. That is correct as well.
Are those rules embodied in statute?
I believe that those rules are in the United States Code regarding the care of the flag, the care and display of the flag.
On school property?
As far as a flag being lit, that's the U.S. Flag Code, I believe.
Yeah, so that's not in this policy, right? This policy says
No, this just says that it'll be
up and down
up and
every
down
day.
every day. And I believe that that's done every day, at least. And if I'm incorrect with that, I believe someone let me know. I know we get calls when things are not. We've gotten phone calls when we've neglected to put the flag at half mast when it should be from time to time, and so
I hope you don't ever put it at half mast, because that would be on a boat. Put it at half
staff. Sorry, thank you for correcting me.
Okay.
It was just a one-off question. I didn't know if any of our schools had a lit flagpole.
I can certainly take this one under advisement. If we need to change it, we can bring it back to you all.
This is weird, but I think Clinton Elementary does have a lit flagpole.
Do they leave their flag up or do they take it
I
down?
think they do take it down, but I want to say they have a lit flagpole.
Completely not the point of the policy, so we can move forward, Chair.
That's just, I think, fine. Do we have a motion to approve this policy? 8800.
I motion that we approve 8800 and recommend to the board.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Anything further? Roll call, please.
Chair Brown,
Yes.
Dr. Pierce,
Yes.
Ms. Beasley,
Yes.
Ms. Klein,
Yes.
Ms. White.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Very good.
So I know that you have a member who needs to leave in about 9 minutes. So I didn't know if you wanted to try to tackle one more or not. Once you lose one member, you will no longer have a quorum.
Well, based on that, which one or ones can we get through the quickest?
We can get through 3124 is a very easy one that we can.
Yeah, that's the short one.
It's
contract.
and the reason it's so short is that This language here is already in policy 1520 and references administrators. It doesn't, this is under the professional employees section. It should be under the administrator section. This is an old version of Neola's former policy, and they caught it and said we need to update it by deleting this language, but it's in 1520. You'll see it here in a little bit. But this is a fairly easy one.
I move we approve the policy 3124 as submitted.
I second.
Great. Any further questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Chair Brown,
Oh, yes.
Dr. Pierce,
Yes.
Ms. Beasley,
Yes.
Ms. Klein,
Yes.
Ms. White.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Great. 1520.
So 1520 is, and actually here is the language right here that we just struck from the other policy. You'll find it here. Neola had and they admit they had a scrivener's error. The word not should have been there. It should have read not less than 2 years and not more than 5. It read not less than 2 and more than 5. So they said that was their bad. They wanted to fix that. The other language that is here, again, comes to the fact that the shift in responsibility from the treasurer to the superintendent, ensuring that the administrator has the proper copy of their licenses. So that just simply restates that particular point.
Dr. Rush, just to note, I see a few his, hers, he, she's in this policy, so
I will go through and
you will clean it up.
clean it up.
Otherwise, I would move that we approve policy 1520 as submitted.
Do we have a second?
Well, will we have to approve it in its cleaned up version? So with the,
Well, sure, but I guess the motion encompasses the cleanup.
okay. I
As
second.
amended, yes.
I second.
All in favor? Roll call, please. That's-
Chair Brown,
Yes.
Dr. Pierce,
Yes.
Ms. Beasley, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Ms. Beasley.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Klein,
Yes.
Ms. White.
Yes.
That motion carries.
And we've got only one more. 1530.
So 1530 is the evaluation of administrators. It removes the reference to OTAS because they use OPES. The basis that they change the word impairs to impacts. Impairs certainly seems to indicate a negative connotation, whereas impacts could be kind of is kind of value neutral in that. Sorry, I've got. And then the rest of this here, the number and timing of evaluations, this is what we do now. So this has to do with the number of times we have administrators are evaluated. If they're not in their final year, it's just at least once. But if it's in the final year of their contract, then there's multiple evaluations. This adds our current practice to the policy.
Any questions, suggestions? Do we have a motion to approve this one?
I note another his, her there. I thought I caught them all, but I missed this one. So I'll have to edit that. But if when you move, you'll allow me to clean up, that would be appreciated.
I motion that we approve policy 1530 with cleanup and recommend to the board.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Chair Brown,
Yes.
Dr. Pierce,
Yes.
Ms. Beasley,
Yes.
Ms. Klein,
Yes.
Ms. White.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Well, we have now gotten through the entire agenda and a bit early. Good job, everybody.
Great job, everybody. Yes.
Is there anything more for the good of the order? Well, thank you all. This has been a good meeting, productive, and we'll tee these up for the board.
Can I motion that we end today's meeting?
You can do that if you'd like. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Sounds good. We're adjourned. Thank you all. See
Have
you
a
soon.
good day, everybody.